transformational cooking, or as a lot of people know, braising, or in another case, matignon. Now, what does matignon mean? Matignon means the size of the vegetable that the protein is cooked on. Traditionally, matignon would also have a little bit of ham in it, historically, but in this case, we're not going to use any other proteins to flavor our matignon except the juices from the protein that we're cooking. In this case, in matignon, we'd be cutting our vegetables to a specific size. Mirepoix can be cut to that size as well. The difference between mirepoix and matignon is that matignon would be vegetables that you typically are going to serve with the protein that you cook it with, where mirepoix would be strained out later because that's just a flavor enhancer for the sauce. We have a lot of different cuts of meat here. We have our pork shoulder, our lamb shoulder, a beautiful lamb shank, a typical pot roast. These 4 cuts of meat, I would suggest that we do in the matignon style. In other words, we would start to sweat our vegetables and then put our piece of protein on top of that and then let that cook. So the sauce that's being made matignon is coming from the juices of the vegetables as well as the juices from the proteins that we're cooking. We're going to work on our matignon in a little bit. The other transformational cooking is called braising. And this is wonderful. Again, it requires really a commitment in time. I love this kind of cooking because it truly is transformational and you get to be part of that process as it goes along. The aromas, the sounds, all those things that I love about cooking are really emphasized in braising and in matignon. Some things that we would braise, this is a beautiful beef cheek. We have our short ribs here with a bone in it. But we also have short ribs here without the bones. This is the short rib plate. Chicken thigh and chicken leg. And then, of course, oxtail. Now, you may be thinking about why would I braise a chicken thigh or chicken leg and not just roast it? It can be done either way. This is one of those pieces of meat that can be just roasted in and of itself or fried, as we've done with our fried chicken. But there's a very classic, beautiful dish in France called coq au vin. And that's a beautiful braise when you marinate your chicken leg in a red wine marinade and then slowly braise that. It comes out beautiful. It's a great dish to eat, certainly in the winter, and something that I remember from a young chef in France eating coq au vin. So these are some of the things that we're going to work on, our matignon and our braising. So in braising, one of the things that you're going to learn is that to make a marinade. And in this case, all of these are going to be made with red wine. So we're going to learn how to burn off the alcohol of the wine because we don't want alcohol in our marinade. We want to eliminate that because the alcohol is going to burn the protein. The other thing that we're going to do is then clarify that marinade. And what does that mean? So as your proteins are marinating, they're losing blood. And we want to remove that blood from the marinade by heating it and clarifying it before we then go to the cooking process with our proteins. Once we're done with the clarification of the marinade, we will roast off or pan roast off our proteins, give them some nice color, and then add back the clarified marinade as well as some stock. Now this will form the cooking environment for our braising, but also give us a base for the sauce afterwards. So the transformation that we're looking for is most of these pieces of meat need to go through the process of cooking to break down that muscle. In other words, they're really tough. It'd be hard to eat any one of these as a sautéed item, for example, or as a grilled item. So the transformation is that breaking down of the muscle so that it becomes more tender. We have to really be careful, especially when we're braising. We don't make a braise and serve it the same day. We always wait at least 1 or 2 days so it has a chance to mature in flavor, but also the meat be able to reabsorb some of the liquid. As it's cooking, the liquid is being pushed out of the meat. We want to cook it very slowly so that extraction of liquid is much less, and then we want to let it to reabsorb as it cools down. When we braise something, we always want to make an abundance of it because it's so good as a leftover. As all of you know, when you've had leftover pot roast, it turns into a wonderful roast beef sandwich. Anything that you can do that is part of this process, because it's transformational, because it takes a certain amount of commitment and a certain amount of time, I would certainly recommend to make more than you're going to need for one meal. It can be turned into a number of different things afterwards. Anything from a ravioli to a lasagna to tacos to almost anything that you can use a piece of braised meat for. It's a wonderful thing to have in your kitchen for a quick meal afterwards. I just want to introduce you to some of the cookware that we'll be using for the techniques of braising in Matignon. We have 2 different pieces here, which are totally appropriate. Another one may be a Dutch oven that you could use. You could always also use a roasting pan and just cover it with aluminum foil if that's something you have. But again, these are items that we're going to be using for braising and Matignon, and I'm really excited, so let's get started.